See some of our new NDAC members hopping on. That's exciting. So we don't have anybody in the waiting room right now, so we're going to go ahead and get started because, as you know, we record these and send after. I am Juanda Mast. I probably know most of you, and I'm the manager of grassroots advocacy for NDSC, and I get to work very closely with our NDAC members, which I love. And we appreciate all of you being on today. I want to recognize, before we go any farther, we have a very special human being because we have our newest NDSC board member, Bradley Carlisle, on our call. Welcome, Bradley.
Thank you.
And Bradley is also our newest NDAC member, I think, too. So we're thrilled to have you, Bradley. And we also have our
Thank you so
NDSC.
much.
Thank you. We also have our NDSC board president, Kate Doherty. And I saw you a minute ago, Jill Reffett, another NDSC board member. And I can't see everybody, so if I miss someone, y'all let me know. But thank you guys for being on with us today, too. I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping, and then I'll share my screen with you. We need everybody to mute themselves. We will take questions at the end of the presentation. You are welcome to put questions in the chat, and we will try to answer those as we go. The ones we don't get to while the call is going on, we will have time at the end that you can ask questions, and that we will also try to address questions we didn't get to from the chat. But anything that may take a little bit more time or that we don't get to, we will follow up by email or a phone call with you to take care of that question. We are recording this call, and we want you to know that. As you all know, the recording and slides will be sent to all NDAC members via email, and we will also be posting those in the NDAC Facebook group. If you have not joined the NDAC Facebook group, I encourage you to do that. It is a great place for us to share information with each other. And as a matter of fact, we had some people wanting to work on the Medicaid waiver wait list in their state. They posted in the NDAC Facebook group, and we were able to coordinate a call with those leaders from some groups to give support to each other. So I hope that you all will take advantage of that and the knowledge there. I want to thank all of you very much for joining our call today, because I know that you have lots of things you can do with your time, and we appreciate your sharing your time with us. So I'm going to share my screen now, and we hope. And let's see if Juanda can find what she's looking for. There it is. All right. So today's our quarterly call. This is our policy team. Cyrus Hunshrek is our director of policy. Stephanie Lee is our senior policy advisor. And they thought they earned themselves a vacation. So they aren't with us today because they're on vacation. And seriously, we're happy that they're on vacation because they deserve it. But you have Chapman Bryant, our policy and advocacy associate, Ricky Sabia, who most of you know, senior education policy advisor, and me. Here's our agenda. We're going to do a few policy updates. Ricky's going to talk some about some education things. I'm going to give you an update on boot camp and the convention, NDAC, also state of the art conference. And then what I believe to be the best part of our program today, we're going to have a presentation from the Maryland Down Syndrome Advocacy Coalition. And I believe that Ricky has our next slide. So we'll go to you, Ricky. Thank you.
Thank you, Juanda. So we're going to start off talking about the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which I know everybody is familiar with. And what you may or may not know, but probably do know, is that every year the U.S. Department of Education issues determination letters about whether or not a state is implementing IDEA, whether they meet requirements, whether they need assistance, whether they need intervention. And the 2023 determination letters have recently been released. They are at the link that I provided for you. All that link says right now is these are the states that met requirements, and these are the states that need assistance or need intervention. There are more details underlying the determinations, which will be released later in the month. OSEP, the Office of Special Education Programs, puts out a response to the state's annual performance report. So every year, a state has to submit a report saying, this is how we're doing on our targets. They have a state performance plan that they do every 5 or 6 years, and then every year they report on their progress on those targets, and that is partially the basis for these determination letters. They're always 2 years behind, so these determination letters are based on 2021 state annual performance reports. Only 22 states met requirements this year, which led to a new OSEP guidance on state responsibilities, which I'll talk about in the next slide. I do want to point out that NDAC has been working for more years than I can recall to try to get these state determination letters have a greater focus on students with Down syndrome. The problem is they have indicators that they measure to determine if the state meets requirements. There are some compliance indicators and some results indicators. On the compliance indicators, they are looking at all students with disabilities, but not at specific disability categories. So, for example, for least restrictive environment, if a state has 70% of kids included 80% or more of the day, they're not looking at the fact that kids who take alternate assessments or kids with intellectual disabilities are included far, far, far less often. And that's an important issue. On the results side of it, they're looking at results on regular assessments and not really looking at anything having to do with alternate assessments, which a lot of our students take. So even with that, even without really looking at our kids for a lot of this, only 22 states met requirements. So, and the next link that I provide for you is the OSEP state monitoring contacts. Every state has certain people that are responsible as an OSEP contact for Part B, which is for the school age kids, and then Part C, which are for the younger kids. And so as I talk about this new guidance, they are supposedly looking more at reports, not just official monitoring, if something is not being implemented correctly. So there may be more power now in reaching out to these state contacts and saying that these are the problems we're seeing with IDEA implementation. Next slide. So this new guidance came out, and it's for Part B, as I said, and C, so the little ones and the more school age up to 21 plus under IDEA. This is the link to that guidance. We don't have time to get into all of it, because it's quite long. For the most part, it doesn't seem like it says a lot new in terms of new requirements, but it does reinforce that the state's general supervision responsibilities, that they're responsible for making sure their districts and schools implement IDEA. And one of the things, as I pointed out earlier, that I think is pretty significant is that they are saying, and you're not just supposed to wait for monitoring for the federal monitors or official state complaints to come around to address noncompliance. You're supposed to be identifying and correcting it even if those things haven't happened. So in other words, if there are media reports of noncompliance, if there are parents, reporting that there are noncompliance, they're supposed to be not waiting for the more formal things to take place to do something. And Also, another thing it says, which again is in the law, this isn't new, but it always is important when the Federal Department of Education underscores something in their guidance and their letters to the states. And one of the things they underscored is the state responsibility to ensure that all students, and they specifically put in there, regardless of the nature or severity of their disability, can access FAPE in the least restrictive environment. So that is underscoring what we all know is in the law, but isn't being implemented, that just because individuals with Down syndrome might have more significant cognitive disabilities in some cases, does not mean that FAPE and least free appropriate education and least restrictive environment do not apply to them. So that is my update on the education guidances and annual determination letters. Thank you.
Thanks, Ricky. Hey, everybody. I'm going to provide some updates on recent legislation that we have endorsed, as well as legislation that we know that's going to be introduced pretty soon. So we have a list here, and they are all hyperlinked to congress.gov, where you can go into more detail with the text. And I'll explain a little more about that later. But the first bill that we have is the IDEA Full Funding Act, introduced by Senator Van Hollen and Representative Jared Huffman. This amends Part B of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act to provide full federal funding of such part. Under IDEA, the federal government committed to pay 40% of the average per pupil expenditure for special education. However, that pledge has never been met, and current funding is less than 13%. This is the first piece of legislation. The second is the Preparing and Retaining All Educators Act, and this is introduced by Annie Custer, and it's to direct the Secretary of Education to carry out a grant program to support the recruitment and retention of paraprofessionals in public elementary schools, secondary schools, preschool programs, and other purposes as well. So the Work Without Worry Act is the next one, and that was introduced by Senators Wyden and Cassidy. So if an adult has a severe medical condition that began before age 22, they may be eligible for a Social Security benefit called the Disabled Adult Child DAC benefits. Their benefits are based on their parents' Social Security earnings in the same way that benefits of a child under 18 would be. However, under current law, some of these young adults fear that if they try to work, they will lose their future DAC benefits, which are often higher than any benefit they may qualify on their own. This fear inhibits the ability of Americans with disabilities to explore their ability to work as they transition to adult life. Financial security, by ensuring that any earnings from work, no matter how much, will not prevent an individual from receiving a Social Security DAC benefit from their parents' work history if they have an eligible medical condition that began before age 22. That's a lot of information. It's a very technical bill of Social Security, but this is a really important piece of legislation to ensure that everyone has access to that DAC benefit. The next piece of legislation is Words Matter Act. This was introduced by Kathy Morris Rogers and joined by Representative Mark Pocan and Pete Sessions and Eleanor Holmes Norton. So this legislation would update the U.S. Code by removing the R word from federal law and replace outdated language and terminology befitting both the 21st century and human dignity. So the next piece of legislation we've been working on with several of our coalitions, the Consortium for Constituents with Disabilities, which is a broad organizations with different disabilities that work together on legislation, sending letters to the Hill and Congress. And the SSI Savings Plan Elimination Act, we do believe to be introduced sometime in mid-September. And this bill will raise the resource limits from $2,000 for individuals to $10,000 and $3,000 for couples to $20,000. And this is certainly a huge issue. As many of you know, there's, working and saving money, saving for retirement, things like that. This is one of the issues since I've started with NDSC that I hear the most, that causes most people the most grief, with saving money and working. So we're really excited about getting this bill introduced and doing a big push on Capitol Hill for this and gaining support for it. The last piece of legislation that we recently endorsed is the National Alzheimer's Project Act, or reauthorization, and this is introduced by Senator Collins. And this will extend through 2035 and make other changes to the National Alzheimer's Project. This project supports coordination of federal planning programs and other efforts to address Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. And they're all hyperlinked here. We're going to provide all these slides after to everyone, but you can click on these hyperlinks also, and it takes you to the congress.gov site for the bill with the text, updated co-sponsors, and all that information. And I'll talk more about that on the next slide. So here we have some helpful links, which goes into more depth on our policy agenda this year. So the first one we have in plain language. The middle is regular version, and the one on the far right is in Spanish. And the QR codes are very easy to use. If you hold up your phone to it on the screen now, it'll actually take you to it directly to our website, where you can download that and stay updated on all the information. And as I was saying earlier too, about staying up to date with information, at the bottom, congress.gov, there's also a link to it. Working on Capitol Hill, I always use congress.gov. It seemed the easiest to use. You can track legislation there also and sign up for alerts on this website. It's usually up to date. It's usually updated through the government's or the Senate or the House.gov, each chamber. So it's usually the most up-to-date information I could find, or it's what I was told to use the most. I feel like it would be the most reliable. And after that, I would kick it off back to Joanda.
Wanda, if you're talking, you're on mute.
Oh, thank you. I just said a whole bunch of stuff that y'all didn't hear. Thank you, Chapman. I was just saying that the IDEA full funding bill, we're excited that that is introduced, but it gets introduced every year. And while we would love to see IDEA fully funded, we do want to manage expectations that that's not something new. It is something that we see every year. So I just want to quickly mention Advocacy Training Boot Camp at the NDAC convention. And you guys know that I always say it was our best one ever. And it really was this year, though. But for those of you who weren't there, I wanted you to see just a few pictures, and you can see some on the on Facebook and social media too. But this one shows just kind of a group shot. It shows Ian and Deborah from Rio Grande Valley speaking about group advocacy and local advocacy in your state. And it shows our two legislators and Stephanie laughing. And I believe that they had both stated that they somehow met their spouses on the campaign trail, and that's why everyone was laughing. And then down in the left-hand corner, you can see our little actors and actresses. We did role plays this year, and they practiced a lot and did a great job. We had 169 attendees at Advocacy Training Boot Camp. 40 of those were self-advocates, and we had 31 states, the District of Columbia, and 4 countries represented. So we thought it was a really good day. And those of you who went, we hope you've done your evaluations. We'll be taking those a little bit longer, and we do use that evaluation material to plan for our next Advocacy Training Boot Camp, which will be at the NDSC convention in Phoenix, Arizona, July 25th through 28th, 2024. The other thing, 2 other things about convention. One of the things we do at Advocacy Training Boot Camp is we share a ton of resources that will help you year round in your advocacy efforts. We house those on the NDSC website year round. So you can go to this link to the NDSC website, go to the policy and advocacy tab, and then you'll see advocacy training. And under advocacy training, you will find training resources where it has some of these things listed on this left side of your slide. And on the other side of your slide, all of the presentations that were done at boot camp, almost all, we don't have the legislators and we don't have the role play, but the presentations themselves are all on the website and you in the same location, and you can access those there. And they are a great way to educate, and sharing some of those out with your members is another great way to educate. We were really, really proud at convention to be able to host Glenna Wright Gallo, who is the Assistant Secretary of the Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services at the U.S. Department of Education. And she let us know, or they let us know just a few weeks before convention that she wanted to come. And she went to a number of things, but we were able to have a town hall just with our NDAC members. And I'm so proud we had 76 NDAC members show up early morning to listen to Glenna. And everyone I've spoken to was very impressed with what she had to say. And we are very grateful that we had the opportunity to host her. This was one of her first, if not her first, I think she actually said it was her first public outing since she had been confirmed. And that's a really big deal. And she was very interested in hearing from our families and spent time listening to a lot of different things. So we're very grateful that we were able to have her. Then just a quick NDAC update. I am also proud to tell you we have 840 NDAC members. We added almost 50 members during convention, and we have members in all 50 states, the District of Columbia. We are up to 105 self-advocate members, but we have 14 states where we still need self-advocate members. So you guys look at this and see if you can help us recruit some self-advocates from those states. And to clarify something, someone thought we could only have one self-advocate from every state. We can have 1,000 self-advocates from a state if they want to join, but we do want to be sure that we have at least one, and we do have some states where we don't have that. We also have 60 group members of NDAC. This just lists out again the states where we really need self-advocate members. And if you know someone or interested, let me know and we'll work on getting you hooked up. But you can find out on the website, there's an NDAC fax, and it has an easy online application. Many, if not most, of our self-advocates choose to listen to the recording of this and look at the slides, because that way you can kind of go at your own speed. In fact, a lot of our members do that too. So that's another good reason for us to share this information. This is something that I can send to any of you. It's just a quick little graphic about NDAC. If you want to share it out on your social media pages or in an e-newsletter that you do, we would love for you to do that. And we have our little QR code there where you can just go in and learn a little bit more and also join. Then here are a couple of links. If you can't do anything else, we want you to sign up for action alerts, because those action alerts will be sent to you when there's an issue we need your help with. And it just walks you through it step by step. And it's a really good way to make an impact. NDAC members, I've already said this, but please join our private Facebook group. We have over 800 NDAC members, but only about 400 Facebook group members. So we would love to have a few more of you on that. The State of the Art Conference is coming up. And if you do not know what the State of the Art Conference is, it is the conference for professionals and students and parents, self-advocates who are interested in post-secondary education. And NDSC is again a silver sponsor of this conference. It's in Colorado Springs in October. They are currently accepting applications for the awards, and you can go to this link and learn more about the conference and about the awards and also about scholarships. One thing I do want to draw your attention to, Stephanie Smith-Lee, you all know, our senior policy advisor, she and her daughter Laura helped start the very first inclusive college program. And there is an award called the Laura Lee Leadership Self-Advocate Leadership Award. And that is given every year at this conference. And there are applications available if you know someone that would be a good person to submit for that. But you can learn more about that at that location. And I think that we have next our Maryland folks. Oh, here's our social handles where you can find us. And now, without further ado, I want to introduce Liz Zogby and Lauren Oshalek, who I hope I never say her last name correctly. They do amazing work in Maryland, and they have lots of good information to share. So we want to turn it over to them and let them share that information.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I am Lauren Ochalek, and you're really close to Wanda here with Liz Zogby, and we have two rockstar self-advocates with us that are NDAC members. We're here today to share a little bit about NDAC and how we as a coalition attended a Maryland State Board of Education meeting and provided testimony in support of inclusive education for students with IDD throughout the state of Maryland. Next slide, please. So in June 2023, we attended, as I said, a Maryland State Board of Education meeting. With us, we brought 28 NDAC members, including 10 self-advocates ages 5 to 21, along with their families. 4 members participated in public comment, and we delivered a stack of family stories to the board, along with some specific asks of our state's educational leadership. Next slide, please. NDAC was originally founded in 2007 and reimagined back in 2021. It is the coalition of self-advocates to include family members, allies, and other Down syndrome organizations from across the state of Maryland, who are all committed to ensuring that individuals with Down syndrome have the opportunity and encouragement, as well as support required to live a self-determined life. Next slide, please. Our membership. We have certainly grown since we came back together in 2021. Since March of 2021, we have 5 Down syndrome organizations across the state of Maryland, along with 129 individual members that have joined NDAC. Our membership is vast. We represent 18 of Maryland's 24 counties, where our members are constituents of 41 of Maryland's 47 state senators and 111 of Maryland's 141 state delegates. We very much think that our grassroots advocacy and our coalition is very powerful within the state. Next slide, please. We have a steering committee. We meet on a monthly basis. We have representatives from Maryland's 5 Down syndrome organizations, as well as other members that are a part of our steering committee with several self-advocates as well. And we have 2 work groups that meet monthly as well, our K-12 education work group and our adults work group. Next slide, please.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Liz Ogby. So I'm Lauren's co-chair. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of sort of context to understand why we decided to take this action. So our K-12 education work group have been working for the 2 years that we've sort of been back around on alternate assessment in our state. So Maryland has exceeded the 1% cap on the number of students who are supposed to take the alternate assessment every year since that cap was instituted. And we have a lot of issues in our state with early identification of students for the alternate assessment. So we, in a couple of districts that are identifying hundreds of students who are in pre-K and kindergarten and first grade for that alternate assessment. And we haven't really been able to make any headway on that. We also have, like in a lot of places, really stagnant rates of segregated placements for students with intellectual disability. So in our state, about 20% of students with intellectual disability and just 3% of students who take the alternate assessment are included in general education classrooms 80% or more of the day. One thing that's a little bit unique about Maryland, we, for many decades, have had the 4th highest rate of any state in the country for students being placed in completely separate special education schools. So about 6% of students who have IEPs in Maryland attend either public or private separate public day schools. And again, that's a really challenging statistic to turn around. Over the years, there have been lots of task forces and commissions and different groups of people who have come together to try to identify some solutions for, particularly around inclusive education. They've identified solutions, but those solutions have not been implemented. And so we've been really working on identifying some of what the barriers are to making progress. And then finally, kind of one unique thing about Maryland. So a couple of years ago, we passed a piece of legislation, our state passed a piece of legislation called the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, which is a really big education reform package. And it included a lot of policy and increased funding for public education. But students with disabilities were almost entirely left out of the blueprint. So that's kind of the backdrop and kind of context for this action. Next slide, please. So in terms of our State Board of Education, we had been trying to kind of build a relationship and a visibility there for a while. Back last September, I went and participated in public comment at the September meeting and introduced sort of what NDAC was and made a statement about our community's expectations for inclusive education. NDAC is also a really active member in a statewide coalition of special education advocates that is led by Disability Rights Maryland. And as part of that work, I had gone on their behalf and given a couple of public comments in the spring, in February and in March of 2023. Next slide, please. And we have a relationship with our State Department of Education, but it had been sort of complicated. We got a new state superintendent in July of 2021. He's a really kind of reform-minded guy, thinks of himself very much as a change maker, but he hasn't shown a lot of interest in special education, and he had basically refused to meet with any state advocates in special education, which is really has been a big challenge. We did have a very close relationship with our director of special education, the assistant superintendent for the Division of Early Intervention and Special Education Services, but she resigned in December, and we have had no director of special education since then. So we really didn't have any direct contact with our State Department. And then one sort of final piece of our context puzzle. So I told you about this blueprint law back in December. With our wider special education coalition, we had done some advocacy and gotten written into the blueprint a special education work group to bring together experts to study special education in our state and make recommendations, sort of the holes that have been left out of this blueprint law. But our State Department of Education has been dragging its heels in establishing that work group. So that's all the things that were happening in the background that led us to this moment. Next slide, please. So we had this idea that we would take a large group to the state board meeting in June. It was after school had ended, but before ESY had started. So we thought that some of our families could attend and bring their students with them. And we thought we would deliver some public comment, and that we knew that one thing we really needed to make sure of is that we had a really tight message. Next slide, please. So here were our goals. We wanted to increase the visibility of our community. One of the things we've heard, especially since the pandemic, had been that families just felt that they were really invisible to leadership in the education world. So we just wanted to raise our profile a little bit. And we wanted to establish NDAC's credibility as representing real families. The state superintendent refusing to meet with special education advocates felt like part of it was that he felt that a lot of the advocates were policy people, but didn't actually represent real people, real families. So we wanted to sort of bring real families with us to show that we are real families and we represent real families. And then in addition to sort of talking about inclusive education, we wanted to have some really specific asks of the board and of our State Department. Next slide, please. And so this was sort of our overarching message, that every student has the right to attend school with their siblings and neighbors. Next slide. And then this was our sort of more specific asks. So we wanted to make sure that special education work group that I mentioned got started. We wanted to make sure that we got a new director of special education for our state. Here we are, it's now been 8 months and we do not have one. And then we really want our State Department to set out some standards and do additional monitoring in our state. And before I kind of get into what those details are, I want to just mention, Ricky mentioned this new Department of Education guidance about states' supervisory authority. And we are using that new guidance to kind of make this argument anew with our State Department. One aspect of that guidance is that that talks about what it means to have a reasonably designed state general supervisory system. And one aspect of it is to have policies, procedures, and practices that result in effective implementation of IDEA. And we have translated that to say, to have policies, procedures, and practices is to have state standards. A state should tell its districts, this is how you should do your district staffing. This is the floor for how many special educators you need for how many students, or how resources should be allocated. They should be monitoring to make sure that IEP goals are appropriately ambitious. They should be looking at their placement data. So, they should have those policies, procedures, and practices. And when I'm done, I'm going to put into the chat a link to a memo that we are using that kind of draws that distinction, ties that guidance to these asks that we've been making. Next slide, please. So this is what we did to pull it off. We did a one-pager kind of outlining what our plan was, what it was we were going to do, and why we were going to do it. We extended, a general invitation to all of our members through our email group and our closed Facebook group. But really importantly, we did individual outreach to families, really thinking about making sure that we had a diversity of geography, racial diversity, and age of self-advocates that were going to attend the meeting. And we asked the Down syndrome organization leaders that are on our steering committee to do that kind of outreach as well to individual families. And almost everyone who attended was someone who got either a phone call or an individual email inviting them to attend. And I just think that was a really important piece. And then when it came to the public comment, we selected the messengers that we really wanted to deliver our message. And I think when you meet Khalif and Gabby in a few minutes, you're going to see why. And we also solicited stories from our family members. Next slide, please. And here we are. We filled the room. We had 27 NDAC members, including the 10 self-advocates. We represented 16 counties. And we had 4 people deliver oral testimony. We had Gabby and Khalif, and you're going to meet them in a minute. Next slide. And we had a wonderful parent advocate from Southern Maryland, Letitia Sambo, and then I delivered MDAC's message. Next slide, please. And here, all of our self-advocates after the meeting, you can see they were delighted with themselves and they did a great job representing. And next slide shows all of us downstairs afterwards, where we gathered to have coffee and donuts provided by one of our Down syndrome organizations. Next slide, please. Yep, we took that time to sort of connect and celebrate a little bit. And then just go to a couple of details. We prayed for people's parking. We made sure that everybody got a thank you note afterwards. We posted our captioned videos of our public comments on our YouTube channel. And we made sure that we communicated back to our whole community via email and Facebook about what we did. Next slide. Okay, Lauren, back to you.
Okay, so we're super excited to introduce you to both Gabby and Khalif. But before we introduce Gabby, we are going to see if Jawanda can please play Gabby's oral testimony so we can all watch that together.
Okay, just a second. I'm working on it, guys.
It's okay. You're good. You're good.
At this time, we'd like to recognize Ms. Gabby Fleming.
So we could hear that, Jawanda, but we can't see the video yet.
Okay, hang on. Sorry.
It's okay.
Can you see it now?
We can.
Okay. Got to move something out of the way so I can play it. Just a second.
Hi, my name is Gabby Fleming. I want to tell you my story of inclusion. I just graduated from Walt Whitman High School in Montgomery County with a certificate. When I was a little girl, I went to a preschool in Israel and Oman. When we moved to Bethesda for first grade, I went to 3 schools before I finally go to my home school where I could walk to school with my sister and my neighbor friends. It was so fun. In elementary school, I sang in the choir and ran in the girl on the right. In the summer, I saw my friend at Hawaii Messiah camps. As a poor for summer swim team, we all grew up together. High school was my school experience. I was in high school for 6 years. I'm so grateful to all my friends and teachers. My living for independence and my teachers were good teachers to me. I love making new friends. I also took classes like ESL in Spanish. I love music technology, band, and band. My favorite memories are singing women idol, dancing before feel at homecoming, winning at budget. Well, it's so much fun. It is so important. A leader in your community. I am a leader of kindness and spirit. My community is full of people who are kind, who include me. Inclusion, if it's just my story, it's our story. I wish for every child knows that belong to the home schools with their siblings, the neighbors, to be a part of the community. Thank you for letting me tell you my story.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jawanda. Can you actually go back to the slide just before this, if you wouldn't mind?
Oh, I hope.
You got
Yay!
it. All right. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce everybody to Miss Gabby Fleming. She is a 21-year-old who lives in Bethesda, Maryland. Gabby, take it away.
Hi. My name is Gabby Fleming. I am a girl who has Down syndrome. I graduated from Montgomery County Public School with a certificate. I am a part of my schools, my neighborhood, and a community. I want to advocate for every kid to be a part of the neighborhood schools. My experience was positive and possible. If my school could do it, then other schools could do it.
Next slide, please.
I wrote this speech for my graduation, and I practiced with my teachers. I changed it for the Board of Education. I feel passionate and beautiful and lucky. I could tell my friends with Down syndrome they can do it. Be passionate and use a strong words. This is a person for study on your own and for connected to people.
Thank you, Gabby. And next slide, please. All right, next up we have Mr. Khalif Rose, and we're going to take a moment to watch his oral testimony.
Caleb Rose.
Good morning, Merlin State School Board members.
Shawanda, we can't, yep, you're good.
Can you
Can't
see
see
it?
that screen. We can't just yet.
You can't see it just yet. Okay, just a second.
It's okay. Take your time. We were able to hear it though. Perfect. Thank you, ma'am.
It's Khalif Rose Holman. I am 17 years old and I'm a rising senior in high school. I am homeschooled and also I also have Down syndrome. I am self-advocate. I'm here today to advocate for students who do not have a mom like my mom. She homeschooled me after 3rd grade. Even when I was in Baltimore City schools, I advocated at my IEP meetings starting kindergarten. My mom believed that the early intervention I received up to 3rd grade was very helpful. After 3rd grade, she felt the supports were not enough and that I deserved better. All students should have an opportunity to be exposed to the best education possible. However, my mom felt that my school was not giving me the best education possible. Because of my mom's decision to homeschool me, I do have times that I miss being with my friends, but she did not to risk me not getting the best opportunity to learn. She is here to support me and advocating for students to get appropriate supports throughout all of their schooling. I would just want to know I may have a Down syndrome, but it is considered a disability. But me and others in my community have many disabilities. Please allow us to be the best that we can and give us the supports we need when in school. Also, by the way, when I finish high school, I plan to attend Harvard University.
All right.
So I just got this jersey and I got to customize it myself.
Hang on, it's coming back. Okay, do we need to go back a slide?
We do, I'm sorry.
That's okay. There we go.
All right. And without further ado, we have Khalif Rose Holman. He is a 17-year-old rock star self-advocate, much like Gabby, and resides in Baltimore, Maryland. Take it away, Khalif.
My name is Khalif Rose Holman. Is a 17-year-old rising senior. In high school, he lives in Baltimore City schools in Maryland, and he is homeschooled. What I enjoy speaking and advocating for myself. I want people to see my abilities. So I did a good job doing this, and I felt really happy, and at the end I felt passionate. I'm happy, and I spent my heart out.
Next slide, please.
I started practicing being self-advocate in kindergarten. I worked the speech at home and rehearsed it. I almost memorized it. I spoke my heart out. I felt really happy. At the end, I was decided to tell everyone about going to Harvard, I was proud to speak for people in my community. Be an advocate for yourself.
Excellent. Thank you both. Go ahead, Liz.
So you can see Khalif and Gabby were both absolutely incredible, and they just had a huge impact. Afterwards, we really heard from board members that they were so delighted to have us there, and it was really meaningful to them. Unlike a lot of district board meetings where families are often in attendance and come to give comments and so forth. At the state board meeting, I think they often don't see families and they don't see kids, and so it really meant a lot to them to have students come and testify. So for us, what's next is we hope to basically use this same template to help advocates in our state to attend their district level board meetings and to bring families with them. And we plan to go back next June to kind of give an update to our state board about how things are going for our community. And the really good news for us is that I'm going to actually be co-chairing that special education work group that we've been talking about with our state superintendent. And we'll be comprehensively reviewing special education and making policy and practice recommendations for our state to kind of fill in those gaps. Next slide, please. And then we just sort of wanted to talk a little bit about kind of what we learned from this experience. Like Joanda has been teaching us for a long time now. There's so much power in being present and telling your story, and we really felt that. We felt that it was really, we learned that it was really important to have a very clear message and make really specific asks, to choose the right messengers, like we talked about, and that how key it is to do that individual outreach. People want to help, but they want to be part of it. And when you ask them, they're happy to be invited and to know that they are important to the effort. And then finally, we just tried to remove as many barriers as we could. Sent very direct emails explaining where, how to get there, where to park, what time was going to start. I'm just trying to make it as simple as possible for families, and for families who submitted materials to us. There also is a link, I think we missed it on an earlier slide, that to the materials that we submitted to the board, so you can see the letters that families wrote in addition to our asks that we submitted as printed materials. And that is it for us. So we're happy to answer any questions. And thanks so much for having us. We really appreciate it.
So Liz, Khalif, Lauren, Gabby and Khalif's parents, thank you so much for doing this for us today. We do have time for some questions. I did want to let you all know that I will try to go through and pull out the links Liz referred to and put those in the follow-up letter we send to you guys. And I loved the stories we heard from our two self-advocates. And of course, I loved hearing that we're using our stories to make change, because your one story does make change and your one voice does make change. And they do need to hear from people that aren't professional policy people, and you don't have to be an expert and you don't have to be able to speak perfectly. You just have to be willing. So thank you all so much. This is all of our contact information, but you all know that, or you can let us know. Oh my, I don't want to be back at that. There we go. So does anybody have questions? We have just a couple of minutes for a few questions. If you have a question, Chapman, I don't think we had any in the chat that we didn't get to, did we?
I'm looking through there now. I don't believe so. If anyone else has any questions, let us know now.
Karen Cole asked how they got invited to give testimony and what is the role of your state commission on special ed. Karen, you may have missed the beginning. Liz, didn't you talk about that at the beginning?
Well, we didn't get invited. We just signed up for public comment. So in ours, there's just rules wherever you are. For us, it's 1 week before the board meeting. you can send an email and say you want to give testimony. And because we wanted to do it as a group, we sort of coordinated to make sure. So I put in the request for each of our slots. And then we actually didn't hear back until the day before that we had actually gotten our slot. So it was a little precarious. That was a tricky part. But yeah, so we just did it through public comment.
And I will tell you, if you've never done testimony, that it is never at a convenient time. They call you the week you're getting ready to go to the NDAC convention and say, we need you to come to the Capitol tomorrow, and we need you at 11 a.m. or right when your kids are getting out of school or something. So it's never convenient. So just be ready for that. And you are limited on your time on testimony, but I have never seen them cut off a self-advocate giving testimony.
Karen also asked what the role of the State Commission on Special Education is.
So this work group got added to our this big education reform package. So the first meeting of it is happening in 2 weeks. It's going to be probably around 40 folks who are coming together. They're going to be, educators, administrators, hopefully some experts, a couple of legislators, some advocates. And we are laying out kind of a scope and sequence of topics to kind of pull people together, read some research, and make recommendations around what kinds of state standards we should have, what kinds of legislative changes they might make. So to kind of fill in the policy piece for this reform agenda that hadn't been done for special education.
Don't you also have a state advisory commission on special education? I thought every state had to have one.
We have a CSAC. We do. It tends to, I don't know how it is in other states. In Maryland, the CSAC seems to be a place where, the state reports out, but there's not a lot of guidance going in the other direction.
Anyone else have a question?
Yes, this is Doug Rothenbush. I'm from the Down Syndrome Association of Brevard in Brevard County, Florida. And Liz, one of the things I'm trying to do here is look at standing up a statewide advocacy council like you have there. I would love to pick your brain. And if you have anything in writing, that maybe a charter or something like that kind of describes what that is. It's one thing to talk about doing things, but then until you start getting it in writing and to be able to get it in front of people, to try to put that out there. So if you have anything like that you could share, I'd love to get in contact with you offline.
Please do. That'd be great.
And Liz, if you have something like that you want us to share, please let me know and we'll be happy to do that too.
Sure, of course.
Other questions? Good questions. Well, I do not.
Hey, Joanna, this is Doug
Yes,
again.
Doug.
Nobody else has got a question, so I'll throw my second one out there. Another thing I'm looking for is training self-advocates. One of our huge self-advocates is online here, Candace Whiting. She's a part of a lot of organizations that a lot of you people know of with NDSS and so forth. And just looking for ways to help train self-advocates to step up and do the things that they do. Looking for some help on that as well.
Doug, if you'll get with me off later, I can talk to you about that. I think we might be able to help you with that and connect you with some other ideas too.
Awesome. Thank you.
Looks like I'm.
Hey, Joanna, this is Carla. I'm sorry.
Yes, Carla.
I'm sorry, I've got a delay, so I couldn't hear. Sorry, Chapman. I got cut off for a second. My Wi-Fi went down, but can we get copies of the memos and everything that the Maryland folks submitted to the state board?
Liz, do you have those?
There's a link in that set of slides to the to what we submitted to the state board. So when Joanna posts the slides, that link will be in there.
Okay, thank you. And congratulations, good job.
There is a question. We're gonna do this one last question and go. Ricky, this may be a question for you. Have you
I see it. So
Okay.
I
The
don't, you don't have-
question, if you can't see the question, have you considered advocating for, have initiative towards protections for students with Down syndrome and IDD in private schools?
So under IDEA, if you are in a private school because you have been placed by your IEP team, then there are protections under IDEA. If you are put there by your family, if that's a family decision, there are some service plans, some services you might be able to get depending on your district. But because we advocate for, these big federal laws, they don't cover private schools because the federal government, we do national advocacy, they can't control what happens in private schools except to a limited extent under Section 504 of the Rehab Act and the ADA. There are certain things like reasonable accommodations or whatever that can be required, not for religious schools under the ADA. So because we do national advocacy with federal laws, there's a limit to what can be done for private schools where you just choose to place your child, at that school. I hope that answers the question.
Emily, thank you for that question. We are out of time. So we like to be very cognizant and respectful of your time. We appreciate all of you. I put in the chat, next call November 8th. We'll have another fun thing for y'all that day. Y'all know how to get in touch with all of us. Go join the Facebook group if you're not on there. We'll be following up with you, and some of you will be following up with us. Thank you so much, Lauren and Liz, Maryland Down Syndrome Advocacy Coalition. And very, very most special thanks to Gabby and Khalif. That is just, you were wonderful today. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thanks, Joanda.